Welcome back to episode 16 of the Rugby History Project. I'm your host Hattie, and today we're looking at when the roses wilted. Remember to like, rate and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching today's episode. It really helps. Following the 2014 Rugby World Cup win, the Red Roses recorded their worst ever result in the Six Nations. This is the tale of how the world discovered that the Red Roses were not perennials. On the 14th of August 2014, the Red Roses lifted the World Cup trophy for the second time in their history, beating North American opposition to become world champions, the same way they'd done so 20 years previously. In their next game, 179 days later, England would be nilled by Wales for the first time in their history. Recording losses against Wales, Ireland and France, and wins against Scotland and Italy, the 2015 Women's Six Nations was the worst on record for the Roses. But how exactly did they wilt so fast? And how did they revive themselves to win the 2017 competition? The Six Nations in the mid-2010s was perhaps one of the most competitive eras of the contest. 3 different nations had taken home the trophy in the 3 years previous to the 2015, with Ireland winning the championship for the first time in their history in 2013. As the world champions, England should have been clear favourites for the trophy, but newspaper reports from the time show a different story. It is not unusual for a tournament-winning team to undergo some form of malaise the following season. Newspapers compared the Red Roses to the England men's team from 2003, questioning if the Roses would also fail to live up to their World Cup glory. With players retiring, the need to bud new players and a new coaching regime, it was expected that the Red Roses could wilt slightly. However, the 2015 Red Roses underwent massive and primarily unnecessary changes, which caused some pretty shocking results for the world champions. Only 3 of England's starting 15 retained their place between the 2014 World Cup final and the opening game of the 2015 Six Nations. Rocky Clark and Tamara Taylor retained their number 1 and 4 jerseys respectively, whilst Kay Wilson shifted from left wing to fullback. In total, only 9 players from the 2014 Matchday 22 remained in the 2015 opening Matchday 23, the extra game day player coming from changes to World Rugby's front row regulations. Talismanic flanker Maggie Alfonsi had retired following the World Cup win, whilst winger Kat Merchant had been forced into medically required retirement due to head injuries in the autumn. The loss of both players is always going to be a struggle for the team. They were just 2 of the players unavailable for the tournament, the sheer volume of which was certainly a thorn in the side of the English coaching team, a coaching team lacking World Cup winning coach Gary Street, who abruptly left the programme only weeks before kick-off. Street's departure from the Red Roses, despite his success, was shocking to many at the time. However, it's been reported that the beloved coach was potentially no longer a fit for the RFU women's programme, who were focused on high-performance sevens in preparation for the 2016 Olympics. Street had been a part of the Red Roses programme for over 8 years, the majority of which he'd served as head coach. Unlike many other male coaches of the era who saw women's rugby simply as a stepping stone, Street had deep roots in the women's rugby community, having first coached a women's side in 1992. His wife, Helen Flippance, was a vintage Rose who received 9 caps in the early 2000s, previous to his selection at coach at blindside flanker, and was a mainstay at the domestic powerhouse of Richmond RFC. Street was to be replaced by Sevens coach Simon Middleton. However, Middleton was in the middle of the Sevens season and therefore unavailable. This led to the squad being coached by head of performance Nikki Ponsford. Whilst Ponsford was a former Red Rose with over a decade of experience in high-performance management, she had no experience in coaching international rugby. Whilst the choice to focus on sevens may have resulted in the removal of Gary Street, it was certainly the reason for the rather empty Red Roses roster. During their World Cup run, much had been made of the amateur status of the Red Roses. Their football, hockey and cricket national counterparts were all professional by this point, and it was surprising to many that a team such as the national rugby team were not. Less than 2 weeks after their World Cup win, the news was leaked to the Telegraph that 20 players, 12 of whom who played in the World Cup, had signed professional contracts. Despite much of the reporting being focused on the World Cup winning squad and many of their players signing their contracts on the bus to the World Cup itself, the contracts were for rugby sevens, not 15s, and that meant that the majority of these professional players were now unavailable for the Six Nations. Of particular concern would be the loss of fly half and captain Katie McLean and the World Cup's top point scorer Emily Scarrett. The loss of these leadership options was heightened by the loss of experienced number 8 Sarah Hunter, who had previously stood in as captain when McLean and Scarrett had been away on sevens duty due to a knee injury. Sunday the 8th of February 2015 is more fondly remembered by Welsh fans than English. The final game of the first round of the 2015 Women's Six Nations was predicted by many to be a more competitive game than the previous year, which had ended 35-3 to England, due to the aforementioned missing English players. Despite this, Wales's win was so shocking that it made it into mainstream press coverage. Unconverted tries from Catherine Edwards and Lauren Harries put Wales up 10-0 by the 50th minute. Harries followed up with a final penalty at the 76th minute to secure a 13-0 win over the English in Swansea. The footage and still images from the win are iconic, reeled out and mentioned almost every year since 2015. However, it was not the tale of a plucky underdog, but rather one of an extremely inexperienced team led by an inexperienced coach who underestimated a far more stable side with home advantage. Whilst conceding 2 tries and a penalty kick, England's nilling was the real concern. Whilst fly half Kerry Large and scrum half Latoya Mason were both experienced players, they had primarily been used as bench options behind McLean and Mo Hunt. Aside from Kay Wilson at fullback, the other backs were relatively inexperienced, with inside centre Megan Goddard and winger Ruth Laybourne having both been fringe squad members, and outside centre Abby Brown and winger Sydney Gregson both receiving their first caps against Wales. In total, there were a whopping 7 new caps against Wales. The unexpected first-round loss against the Welsh sent the RFU into a tailspin. Whilst it is likely that the French and Irish squads were always seen as a threat to the RFU, it is unlikely that a loss to the Welsh was seen as a possibility. Whilst a second or third place finish wouldn't have been preferred for the world champions, slumping past further than third was unthinkable. England's 2 wins in the 2015 Six Nations came against Italy in week 2 and Scotland in week 4. Both countries were in a period of rebuilding after failing to qualify for the 2014 Rugby World Cup. Just under 3,000 people watched the Roses fire past the Azzurri at the Stoop for a 39-7 win. English fans in Darlington were treated to a 42-13 win against the Scots a few weeks later. The wins were aided by the return of Katie McLean, who'd been drafted in not only to start fly half in week 2, but also reclaimed her captaincy in week 3. While Sevens players such as Sarah McKenna helped to bolster the squad in some rounds, the bench was propped up by Amber Reid, who was slowly returning from injury. The return of McLean was a clear attempt to stop the wilting of the Red Roses. Everybody is aware that we're in a rebuilding phase, so that game was very important to us. I've got 6 caps less than the rest of the backline put together. This Six Nations is going to be hard, and that result will really help. It's more wide open than it's ever been. We want our sport to be recognised, and the only way that happens is with competition increasing. Katie McLean, following the 2015 Six Nations win over Italy. Unfortunately for the RFU, whilst the Roses overcame Italy and Scotland, they faced defeats at the hand of Ireland and France. Whilst England led for most of their game against Ireland, a 74th minute penalty kick from Niamh Briggs put Ireland in the lead at home. France bounced back from a 17-12 loss to Italy to beat England 21-15 at Twickenham. Thanks to a Jessie Tremoulier kicking masterclass, France were able to secure a second place finish in the tournament, with Ireland taking home the crown thanks to their superior points difference. With bonus points yet to be part of the competition, England only had 4 table points, making them joint 4th with Wales. However, due to their large wins over Italy and Scotland, England were logged as 4th rather than 5th. Following the final round loss to France, Nikki Ponsford was forced to defend the team against accusations of decline from journalists. The rest of 2015 was a rollercoaster for the Roses. Simon Middleton officially took over as head coach of both the English Sevens and 15s programmes and appointed second in command Scott Beamond. Despite this, it took a period of time for the new programme to bed in. A loss to New Zealand in the Summer's Super Series, followed by a second loss to France in the autumn, meant that 2015 was the second most losing year on record for the Red Roses. Seven stars such as Marley Packer and Emily Scarrett were able to return in late 2015 following the conclusion of the short-form season. However, the majority of contracted players were once again missing from the Six Nations in 2016. A far more settled side took the field in 2016. Sarah Hunter returned from injury to captain the side, whilst a fully fit Amber Reid took the reins at 10. Attack coach Scott Beamond coached the side due to Middleton being with the Sevens programme. Whilst Beamond had little international coaching experience, he had spent time working under Middleton in the Red Roses environment by this point. With the new caps from 2015 now having had a year of development in a high-performance environment, the team was able to win 4 games. However, they yet again fell to France, securing a second-place finish. It wouldn't be until the 2017 Six Nations that the Red Roses returned to full bloom, winning their 13th Grand Slam and 14th overall title. The preference for rugby sevens within the RFU's women's programme following the 2014 World Cup win harmed 15s. The team was due to undergo a period of rebuilding anyway, with player retirements and an only 3-year turnaround until the next World Cup. However, the RFU withdrew their best players for the seven circuit, leaving the 15 side short of experienced talent. It should also be said that many of the 2015 contracted players have since said that sevens was not the game for them due to tactical and fitness concerns. However, the opportunity to be a professional was too great a reward for them. Looking back, it is also possible that if Gary Street had been in post to bring the team through their period of transition, they may have been able to see different results. Whilst the Red Roses wilted in 2015, it's safe to say the experience resulted in a far stronger programme. Players such as Abby Ward, Amy Cocaine and Meg Jones were capped during this period of transition. It was also the only major period in which rugby sevens was prioritised in such a fashion in England. Whilst other women's programmes have been built on the back of dual holders due to the talent pool and structure of the European international season, such a system would not guarantee success in both codes for the English. Whilst dual coders still exist in English women's rugby, it is not to the same extent as, say, Canada or New Zealand. Whilst the Rugby Football Union's decision caused the Red Roses to wilt initially, ultimately it allowed them to bloom. I bloomin' love the Women's Six Nations, and this is the second of 3 posts I hope to write this year. If you would like to check out the other articles I've written in this wider series, you can find those on my website, or you can find video versions on this YouTube channel or Spotify. They all contain significantly fewer flower puns than this one does. I hope you've enjoyed this post. If you'd like more regular updates, please check out my Instagram, Twitter and or Blue Sky. I've also recently started a Facebook page if that's more your vibe. You can also catch me podding every Tuesday morning on Rap, apart from this weekend because we didn't do a bank holiday one, or with Women's Rugby Treehouse somewhat regularly. A written version of this post is also available on my website, therugbyhistoryproject.com, which is also where you can find all my references and footnotes, etc, etc. You can also upgrade to Historian tier to help support the project financially, which I really do appreciate.